Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Long time no see, right? I know it has been quite a while since I uploaded the last time, but I've just been so much more busy than I ever thought I would be. Like, up until today, I haven't had a single hour to just sit down and research a case, let alone film it, edit it, and upload it. So, yes, I know I haven't uploaded at all in the last 2 months pretty much. I mean, I uploaded one video, but that's it. And I'm swear I'm not abandoning this channel. I just need some more time between videos to be able to properly research a case and do quality content for you. And today's case is going to be insane, honestly. First of all, it's a two-parter, the first two-parter on my channel, and that's because it's very long, there's a lot of names, a lot of information, but also because it's very brutal and kind of a lot to take in at once. Today's case, we are going to talk about a fake pastor who killed off his entire family, essentially, who had a fake organization, was in a sex trafficking ring, and an incestuous relationship. There is just so much to talk about, cannot be done in one video. So make sure to tune in for the next video. I think it's going to be live next week or as soon as I can edit it, honestly. And here are all the content warnings for you. We are going to talk about rape, grooming, murder, graphic descriptions of murder. Oh, what else? Sex trafficking, potentially, just mentions of it. So if any of these are too much for you to listen to, then I recommend you don't watch this video at all. But then again, I don't know what you're doing on my channel. So today's case is about Pándy András. He was born in 1927 in the town of Chop. And this town first belonged to Hungary and then to Czechoslovakia, and now it is in present-day Ukraine, because this town is right at the border of these three countries. Either way, he was from Hungarian descent, but on behalf of every Hungarian, I can say that we do not claim him as one of us for sure. He was one of 4 siblings. He had 2 older brothers and 1 younger sister, and there is not much to know about his family, only that they were quite poor. Actually, both of his parents eventually ended up in prison for theft. That's how much they struggled with money, that they had no other way of providing for their children. And you would think that, sure, this is definitely a very bad place to start your life, but by the people that knew him, he was always described as a very foul person. He was always mean, aggressive, he was a bully, he was manipulative, abusive in all kinds of ways. He was just full of himself like a true narcissist. And all the negative things, all the negative words that you can think of. But little did all of these people know in his life what kind of a monster he would actually turn into as the time passed. One thing he always made sure to tell people was that he had no intentions of staying in this shit country, that he was going to go to the West and make a great living for himself over there. And the other thing that we can know about him is that all him and his brothers studied theology from a very young age, but only his oldest brother actually properly finished his theology studies. Despite this, in 1953, András was able to start practicing as a deacon, which is kind of like an assistant pastor in the Calvinistic faith. And during this time is when he met and married a woman named Ilona. Now, if you are only familiar with Catholicism, you might find it weird that a religious leader, like a pastor, is able to get married, but that is normal in Calvinism, and yeah, that's about that. He made his dreams of moving abroad come true in 1957 after the Revolution of 56, which I'm sure you already know very well based on my other videos. Him and his wife left Hungary. They escaped and fled first to Vienna and then to Brussels in Belgium. Upon arriving in Belgium, the local authorities never bothered to ask for any kind of proof what kind of profession or studies he had completed. So when he arrived, he just said that he was a pastor, and the locals just believed him. So without any proof, without any real certification or authority, he was just given 4,000 followers. He was given a convention of 4,000 Hungarian Calvinists to lead in their journey on their faith in God. And I find it kind of weird how local authorities wouldn't bother to ask some kind of a proof that he is even allowed or qualified to do this kind of a job at all. But they didn't, and he was able to practice as a pastor for the next 20 years, and that is how his fake pastoring job started. After 1 year of living in Belgium, so in 1958, his wife gave birth to their first child together. It was a daughter named Ágnes, and then they had 2 more sons, Daniel and Zoltán. Now, sadly, András's character didn't really improve throughout the years, even despite being a fake pastor. If anything, he was the worst that he has ever been. He was super abusive, manipulative, incredibly aggressive at home, and he soon started sexually abusing his daughter Ágnes and his older son Daniel. Now, on the one hand, I find it very hard to believe that Ilona, the mother, wouldn't have known about the sexual abuse going on, because they were all living under the same roof, and sexual abuse can have very apparent signs to anyone who is willing to listen and pay attention. On the other hand, I also find it believable that maybe Ilona was terrified or manipulated by her husband, and that's why she didn't have the courage to stand up against him and protect her children. But anyway, after 14 years of marriage in 1967, the pair decided to divorce, and the way they went about the separation is a little bit odd to me, because Ilona only took the 2 sons and only moved 2 houses away. She left her daughter Ágnes behind with the man that she supposedly hated from the bottom of her heart and wanted to leave completely. So even if she did not know about the sexual abuse going on, why would you only take 2 of your children and leave 1 behind, especially with such an abusive person? Again, I can only say that we don't see into what their family dynamic was like. We don't know what kind of a mother Ilona was. I just think it's interesting to note that she just left Ágnes behind like that. And so now András and Ágnes, the father and the daughter, were living together in this big family home, all alone. At this point, Ágnes was only 9 years old, and she had been sexually molested by her father for who knows how long. And when not even her mom was present to kind of try to protect her, all hell broke loose. And András started abusing and raping this little girl to an unbelievable extreme extent. And at some point, this rape turned into grooming, and he started building a romantic relationship with his daughter, and it's just getting worse from there. This 9-year-old little girl had no idea that having sex as a little girl, as a child, with her own father was abnormal and unbelievably fucked up. She had no idea because she grew up in this. This was all she knew, and she thought that this is just what a father does to a daughter, I guess. And later on in an interview, decades later, she said that she was in love with her father, that this was a deep romantic love, and they were just infatuated by each other. She said that they had this very deep connection and all sex between them was always consensual. But needless to say, a 9-year-old child is unable to consent to sex. So there is like nothing to say about that anymore. That sex was not consensual. But on top of that, a 9-year-old kid has no idea about what a deep romantic love is supposed to be like. It's just so crazy to me how András was able to groom her so perfectly that she genuinely believed that this was love and this was normal. It's just very sad. And this is only the beginning. And I haven't even mentioned that András stank. He was smelly, he was dirty, he barely ever bathed, he didn't change his clothes, and everybody that knew him always complained that he smelled like the worst hobo that you can imagine. And I mean, just look at him. He's repelling as fuck. I get nauseous looking at him. And while all of this was going on, András also started building up his little religious foundation that he named after himself like a true Anna Delvey fan. And the point in this foundation was to help and support underprivileged but talented children to get better education and to have access to all kinds of tools so that they can nurture their talents. And he took out all kinds of loans and governmental aids for this foundation, but as you can imagine, the beneficiaries of this foundation never saw a single cent of it. He kept all of that money to himself. Eventually, this foundation was shut down in 1978, but up until he was finally arrested in 1997, so almost 20 years later, we don't really know how he had money, what he did for a living, which is very weird considering that he had multiple houses and properties and assets, so he definitely made good money coming from somewhere, but where, nobody knows. I mean, I have a guess, but more on that later. So at this point it looks like this terrible man has it all. He has a little lover in the form of his own daughter, and he has money coming in from his foundation, he has properties, he has houses in Hungary and in Belgium, but all of this still wasn't enough for him. He decided that he wanted to have a proper girlfriend, like a real woman in his life, not just his preteen daughter. So he put up ads in the newspaper back in Hungary, searching for a possible love interest. One of his ads was the following: non-smoker middle-aged man with kids looking for a non-smoker woman with kids. I want her to have kids because I want to fill my house with the voices of children. Which is kind of fucked up, considering that we now know he was a pedophile. And he was quite successful in this, and at least 8 women responded. I believe that the reason was that these women wanted to escape Hungary and just have any kind of reason to be able to move to the West and live in a free country and try to escape this hellhole that communism was. Because other than that, I don't see why anyone would ever want to go out on a date with this man. Jesus. So anyway, all of these women visited him in Belgium and they never returned to Hungary again. And they were also never sighted in Belgium or anywhere else ever again. Nobody knows where all of these, at least 8 women, disappeared after their first date with András. They were just gone, poof. Curious, we could say. So it looks like András still hasn't found the love of his life. He is still searching for the one. So eventually, in 1978, he decided to make a visit to Hungary and just start dating women in person, because doing it over newspaper ads wasn't so productive after all. And during his visit in Hungary, he met a woman named Fintor Edith. She was already divorced, she was in her late 30s, and she had 3 young daughters. The oldest daughter was named Tímea, like myself, then Tunde and Andrea. And the two hit it off, or so it seems, it was good enough, and they got married while still in Hungary. And that was how he was able to smuggle his new family, his new wife, and his 3 stepdaughters across the border, and he was able to bring them to Belgium, where they settled in his family home. I'm kind of confused about how this man now has managed to go across the border twice, because he has already left Hungary in 57, and now he was able to smuggle his entire family across the border, and this was not such an easy thing to do, to my best knowledge. Especially because, if you know from my other videos, we could not go to the west at all, and even to the east, like to the Soviet Union, you were only allowed to apply for a visit once every 3 years with a limited budget and for a limited time. So I really don't know how he was able to smuggle 4 people across the border with him, but he was successful. And soon after the move to Belgium, Edith gave birth to 2 more children that were the biological children of his and hers, a daughter named Reka and a son named András Jr. So, as I said, this would be a complicated family tree. Let's just summarize what we know so far, okay? So, first of all, András had 3 children from his previous marriage, but after the divorce, he was left with Ágnes alone, who was his daughter, and they had an incestuous relationship going on for years now. But his ex-wife and his 2 sons moved away and lived separately. Now he has a new wife, Edith, and her 3 daughters, as well as their 2 kids together, living under the same roof. So that sums up to 8 people living in the same house. We know that András is a pedophile, and he has molested at least 2 of his children at this point, and to such an extreme that Ágnes is now his full-time live-in lover. But now he was also married to Edith at the same time. This is getting very, very complicated. So you would think now, okay, that's too much information. This man is handling too many things at once. This still wasn't enough for him. He took a liking to Edith's oldest daughter, Tímea, who was 15 or 16 years old at this point. And he started molesting her and raping her on a regular basis too. But Tímea was older and smarter than this, and she knew that this was a morbid and abnormal thing to do. And she actually tried to fight against this abuse. She tried to get out of this situation. But sadly, András was always stronger, and he forced himself on her so many times that eventually poor Tímea fell pregnant with his child. When she was just barely 16 years old, she gave birth to her son named Mark in 1984. And her own mom, Edith, had no idea about the abuse somehow, and she also didn't know that her grandson was also her stepson. I guess Edith just shrugged it off. She thought that her daughter fell pregnant from some boy in town, and she didn't care about it at all. So I also don't know how good of a mother Edith could have been if she ignored all of these red flags, giant red flags. And let me just clarify this for you. I think we need to bring more attention to this part of the story. In 1984, when Tímea gave birth to her son, Ágnes was already 29 years old, okay? She was groomed and molested ever since she was at least 9 years old, if not younger, so literally at least 20 years. She was molested and groomed and in this oddly intimate romantic relationship with her dad for her whole life. Now 6 years have passed ever since the new family moved in with them, Edith and her 3 daughters, and during this entire time, Ágnes and András still maintained their sexual and romantic relationship. This did not stop with Edith moving in. This did not stop with the marriage. This did not stop with Tímea's abuse and pregnancy. She wasn't just a sex partner to her dad, like she was full on deeply in love with him. And we don't know how he felt about her, but he definitely took advantage of her. And Ágnes was always enraged and insanely jealous every time she saw her dad in the presence of another woman. She always thought that her number one enemy was the woman that got too close to her dad. Naturally, this is why she always hated her stepmom Edith from the first day that she moved in with them. But that wasn't enough now. András was also having sex with Tímea, and in Ágnes's eyes, this was cheating. And on top of that, Tímea got to give birth to a baby. The only thing that Ágnes ever wanted. Ágnes wanted to be the one to have a baby with her own father. And when Tímea got to have that, she was so jealous. She just hated Tímea for all of this, and she wanted to keep her dad all for herself, and she wanted to have what Tímea had. So she came up with this plan to take her revenge. And honestly, just saying these sentences make me want to puke. Honestly, this is disgusting. But now back to the story. One day, when no one else was home, Ágnes coaxed Tímea into one of the rooms in the house, where she attacked her with either a hammer or a metal rod and started beating poor Tímea to death. Thank goodness Tímea was able to escape and run away, and she took her infant baby boy and escaped from the house. And somehow, we don't know how, she was able to flee the country and escape to Canada. Now, bear in mind, she was only 16 years old with a baby to care for, so it is for sure that she could not do that alone, but we don't know who helped her to escape to Canada. Now, when she arrived in Canada, she moved and changed her name multiple times because she knew that Ágnes would be after her. She knew that this wasn't over, and this crazy bitch was gonna come after her. And I mean, she was right, because Ágnes and András flew from Belgium to Canada on 3 separate occasions just to go after Tímea and try to kill her and her baby, because they were the living proof that András is a pedophile, and they just had to keep Tímea silent. They couldn't let her tell the truth to anyone. But thank God they never were able to find Tímea in Canada, and she escaped and survived this insane hell of a story entirely. But this part of the story is still not over yet, because from Canada, Tímea wrote a letter to her mom, Edith, where she told the whole story. She said the reason to why she had to flee from not just the house, but from the whole country, that she was abused by her stepdad, that Ágnes and András had this incestuous relationship going on for so long, and that Mark was actually the biological son of András. Now, Edith was in complete shock and disbelief. I mean, as you would expect, apparently she really had no idea that this was going on this whole time. And she had no idea that her grandson was actually also her stepson. And what I think I would have done, and what I think that she should have done in this case, was just leave this relationship, get the fuck out, leave without a word, and just call the police and tell the truth. But that's not what she decided to do. She decided to confront András about it, which was a bad idea because he was very aggressive, abusive, and physically stronger, so she didn't stand a chance against him. András now knew that his secret was out and he had to get rid of Edith as well, as she knew too much and posed as a threat. But that is where we are going to end part 1. It's already a very long video. So let me know what you thought about this case so far down in the comment section, and please don't forget to tune in for the second half of this case, because it's a downhill from there. We haven't even talked about the murders and all of the conspiracy and secrets that we are going to unearth in that part. So make sure to tune in. I will keep you posted about when that video goes live, but it should be in about a week's time. And until then, thank you so much for watching, and I see you next time.